The notification popped up while I was mid-sentence, writing an exception handler, ironically. Meeting with Marcus. Now. No subject line. No context. Just a calendar bomb set to detonate 5 minutes into my lunch break. I thought maybe it was about the final investor demo, some last-minute adjustment to the rollout schedule, maybe a funding angle. I even brought my dev notebook with me, like a damn intern trying to be helpful. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Just waved one hand at the chair across from him and kept clicking through slides on his laptop. My slides, my system diagrams, my notes transcribed like scripture but stripped of the author. When he finally spoke, it was with that syrupy fake politeness voice he saved for clients and firings. So, we're making some optics-based adjustments ahead of the round. That was the first red flag. Not we're excited, not great progress, just corporate taxidermy. Then came the meat of it. We need to streamline the org structure to align with valuation models. That means letting go of some roles that could, let's say, confuse the narrative. I blinked. What narrative? He finally looked at me then, full of oily sympathy. You've done great technical work. But this phase is about vision. Storytelling. Investors don't buy code, they buy clarity. His smile twisted into something between a smirk and a wince. You're a genius, but sometimes, you speak in brackets. That's when it landed. I wasn't being transitioned. I wasn't being repositioned. I was being erased. 3 years of work, from whiteboard scrawls on a WeWork wall to full production deployment, scrubbed away like a merge conflict. No severance. No exit strategy. Just a thin envelope with my final paycheck and a thank you for everything. That sounded like a eulogy for someone he never liked. Some of you are probably listening to this thinking, why didn't she fight back? And maybe I should have. But when a man like Marcus is playing to a crowd with money, facts don't matter. Not right away. So I stood up. I adjusted the strap of my laptop bag. And I said the calmest, most dangerous thing I've ever said in my life. Okay. Before we go on, real quick, if you've been pulled into something like this, if you've had your name scrubbed out of your own work, please subscribe and hit like. I know 97% of you listen without subscribing, but it really helps the team bring you more stories like this one. Anyway, I walked out slow, past the shared workspace with the war room still covered in architecture diagrams with my handwriting, past the junior devs who didn't look up because they thought I was heading to lunch, past Marcus's glass office, where I could already see him dialing someone, probably prepping the investor deck with himself as chief technologist. But he didn't notice the envelope I slipped into my bag. Patent filing draft. Inventor me. Not him. Not the company. Me. And the thing about legally filed patents? They don't care about storytelling. I didn't take the company mug or the branded hoodie or the little nameplate with my job title etched in aluminum like that meant anything now. Just my dev notebooks, 3 years of chicken scratch pseudocode, architecture maps, version trees, annotated bug lists, and the manila folder I'd started assembling 6 months ago, back when Marcus first started showing up to product reviews in suits instead of hoodies. That was the first sign. The moment he stopped listening and started pitching. I kept my expression deadpan as I passed the glass fishbowl of a meeting room we once called the war room. The diagrams were still up. Marker ink starting to fade from the months they'd sat untouched, unchanged, because the core system didn't need tweaks. It needed guardians. I used to laugh at how obsessive I was with documentation. Version control across paper and digital, signed timestamps, redundant backups. Now it felt like prophecy. Every flowchart, every modular breakdown had my initials embedded in the corner. Not out of ego, out of habit. A silent way of marking history, like a signature in the foundation of a house. My desk was still warm. One of the interns had left a coffee there. Thinking I'd be back in 5. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe anyone a scene. That's the thing about getting gutted quietly. You bleed inside, but you walk out looking whole. Let the vultures guess how deep the damage runs. I slid the folder into my bag without ceremony. Patent application. AI-based modular training and inference system. Filing status. Confirmed. Inventor me. Assigned to no one. Yet. There was a brief moment in the elevator. Just me and the hum of a building that didn't realize I was leaving for good. where I almost cried. Not from sadness. From restraint. From the pure volcanic pressure of knowing that if I said what I wanted to say, I'd be giving him exactly what he wanted, a tantrum. A clean reason to write me off as emotional or difficult to manage. No. He got a silence so deafening it would echo later. By the time I hit the parking garage, my hands had stopped shaking. I started my car and sat there for a full minute, staring at the dashboard like it held some kind of answer. I thought about everything I'd built, not for a title, not for Marcus, but because I believed in the damn thing. I knew the architecture inside out because it was mine. No matter what he told the investors, no matter what he slapped on the PowerPoint slides, he could wear the title. But he didn't own the system. Not in the legal sense. Not in the creative sense. And soon, very soon, not in the operational sense either. I pulled out of that garage like it was a crime scene. Because in a way it was. And the getaway car was quiet, but loaded with evidence. I always knew Marcus was good at selling things he didn't understand. That was his superpower. Confidence inflated with just enough jargon to sound like competence. So it didn't surprise me when the company's LinkedIn lit up with posts about the visionary behind the AI revolution, accompanied by headshots of Marcus standing alone in front of slides I had designed. He'd swapped out our working names for modules, called them things like Neurogrid and Predictive Engine X. Sexy terms. Useless terms. But they made suits lean forward in boardrooms and nod like they were in the presence of Jobs' ghost. I watched it all from a safe distance. Set a Google alert on the company's name, browsed the photos posted from investor dinners, live-streamed the opening keynote of his showcase event with the sound off. I saw him grin in front of a giant screen showing my architecture diagram, tweaked just enough to strip out the metadata. No mention of dev leads. No reference to internal version control. Just lines, boxes, and the illusion that he'd birthed it all himself in a fever dream of entrepreneurial genius. The rage didn't come all at once. It showed up in small pulses. The way he stood at a lectern pretending to explain the difference between embedded weights and contextual token mapping. Fumbling through it like a high schooler giving a book report on a novel he hadn't read. I didn't throw my coffee. I didn't scream at the screen. I just took notes. Not of what he said, but what he didn't say. The gaps. The omissions. The legal cracks already spiderwebbing beneath the surface. Then 3 days later my phone rang. Unknown number. U.S. Patent Office. I picked up expecting a follow-up on my previous filing, maybe a signature request or confirmation delay. But the woman on the line cleared her throat and said, "Hi, we've received a licensing request for patent application 374X, 9021B. You're listed as the inventor and sole applicant. Just calling to confirm you've authorized third-party usage." I blinked. "No," I said flat. "I haven't." She paused. "Right. Okay. Then I'll flag the request. Someone may have submitted using your name or related materials. We'll follow up via email." I didn't even ask who. I didn't need to. Marcus must have thought the paperwork would slide through unnoticed, buried under the momentum of investor buzz and champagne toasts. He probably believed no one at the USPTO actually reads the filings. They just rubber stamp and move on. That was his whole model. Move fast, look shiny, fix the mess later. But I wasn't just watching anymore. I was tracking. And now, thanks to one polite government employee and Marcus's need to monetize what he didn't own, I had confirmation, on record, that he'd tried to license tech without proper authorization. He'd fired me to streamline his story. What he didn't know was that I'd already written the footnotes. And footnotes, when examined closely, can unravel the entire narrative. Due diligence is where storytelling goes to die. It's the phase Marcus never respected, the one he used to mock in meetings, called it paranoia paperwork, or an old-school investor kink. But now, with 7-figure term sheets on the line and more than one VC firm sniffing around for exclusivity, someone finally said the words he'd been hoping to dodge. "Let's verify everything." The first crack came in the form of a forwarded email I wasn't supposed to see. A former product manager, quiet, observant, fired 2 weeks after me, sent it from an encrypted Proton Mail account. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "They're asking about the original architecture doc. You'll want to see what he gave them. Attached was a sanitized PDF Marcus had included in his investor materials. A visual overview of the AI platform, modules, data flow, integration points. At first glance, it looked clean, slick even. But he'd gone too fast, too confident. He didn't realize the version he'd exported was from 2 years ago, back when we still stamped internal drafts with embedded creator watermarks for traceability. Bottom right corner, barely visible unless you zoom to 300%. SKLM.2.7a. My initials. My version mark. My quiet little insurance policy. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen like it had just confessed a murder. He hadn't just used my work. He'd used a version proven to be mine. Timestamped. Undisputed. And now, under active review by a team of lawyers and analysts trained to notice those kinds of fingerprints. Meanwhile, the storm clouds started rolling over Marcus's parade. Investors weren't content with animated decks anymore. They wanted repositories, logs, contributor records. They wanted a full paper trail from concept to code to deployment. His answers got longer. His tone got tighter. Legal started joining his meetings uninvited. He told one firm the system was built by a small, agile team under his direct vision. He told another that proprietary elements were developed in-house with founder oversight. No names, no acknowledgements, just smoke and mirrors. But the thing about due diligence is if you promise a window and they find drywall instead, they start digging with crowbars. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't make a phone call. I didn't send an anonymous tip. I simply let the pressure build. Let the questions multiply. Let his answers tighten into contradictions. At one point, I heard, secondhand, that he tried to blame the watermark on an early contractor who left on bad terms. Said she was never part of the strategic core. But that lie only worked until they checked the internal Slack logs. Until they saw how many commits were tagged with my user ID. How many build notes reference conversations with me. How many critical bugs were logged, triaged, and solved entirely under my name. Marcus had built a castle of mirrors. But every single one still reflected me. And now the people holding the checkbooks were beginning to notice. The message came in on Signal, short, precise, and with the kind of weight that makes your chest hollow out for a second before adrenaline floods back in. Your name came up in the audit. Thought you should know. No greeting. No sign-off. Just digital dynamite from a former colleague who'd kept her head down and her ethics intact. I stared at the words for a full 30 seconds, rereading them like they might rewrite themselves, then locked my phone and exhaled slow. It had started. I already suspected things were unraveling, but this was confirmation. Marcus wasn't just struggling to bluff his way through architecture reviews. He was officially under the microscope. And someone somewhere had pulled the trigger that would finally make truth matter again. Word was, one of the lead investors, a boutique tech fund with a reputation for aggressive diligence, brought in their own legal team after Marcus dodged a third request for IP documentation. Not the company's lawyers. Not his wine and dine cronies. A cold, external crew with zero emotional investment in Marcus's ego and a direct mandate to verify every claim. They pulled patent filings. Scraped every listed inventor. Cross-checked timestamps. Parsed metadata. And they found it. Not just my name. My application. My signature. My draft. The original submission. Filed solo, months before Marcus ever learned how to spell tokenization. The assignee field had been left blank because I hadn't transferred ownership to anyone. The correspondence address was still my old apartment in San Jose. The document ID linked to a session recorded from my personal login. A chain of custody so clear it could have been framed and mounted. This wasn't a gray area. This wasn't collaborative ownership or founder-led ideation. It was theft, badly papered over with bluster and ego. And now, someone with a law degree and a mandate was staring directly at it. I imagined Marcus sitting at the end of a long conference table, trying to keep his voice steady as a woman in tortoiseshell glasses calmly asked, "Can you explain why the patent you're claiming to own is filed solely under this name?" And when he tried to pivot, she'd just slide the original scanned draft across the table, maybe with a yellow post-it on it. Source, USBTO. The thought didn't make me smile. Not exactly. But it did bring a kind of quiet satisfaction, the kind that starts in your ribs and radiates out like a slow, warm tide. I wasn't angry anymore. Not loud anyway. What I felt now was colder, calmer, like standing outside and watching a house burn that you used to live in, while holding the original blueprints and the deed in your coat pocket. I didn't text back. Didn't gloat. Didn't post a vague victory tweet or leak a single word to anyone. Because this wasn't the finish line. It was the fuse. And I wanted to see just how far the fire would travel. It happened on a Thursday, mid-afternoon. Marcus had stacked the Q&A toward the end of the day, figuring he'd ride the momentum from his keynote into an easy close. The room was packed, sleek glass walls, catered snacks, warm lighting engineered to make everyone feel just a little more confident than they should. Every major stakeholder was present. VCs, analysts, a few press reps who'd been accidentally invited to witness the moment their firm bet big on the future of AI. Marcus had on his visionary founder uniform, tailored jacket, no tie, sleeves rolled just enough to show his watch. He opened with charm, with stories. Childhood curiosity, nights in the garage training early models, his discovery of the core concept after months of iteration. I counted at least 4 lies in his opening paragraph alone. Not even clever ones. Recycled TED Talk filler. Then came the slide. The architecture overview. The same one he'd been using for weeks. The same one with my watermark still faintly baked into the bottom corner. A few of the more technical investors leaned in. One asked about the modular scheduler, how it handled thread conflicts during asynchronous training. Marcus blinked, paused, said something about dynamic weight mapping, which didn't make sense in that context at all. Another asked how the system adapted to nonlinear data bursts. He smiled wider, talked about proprietary heuristics. His go-to phrase when he didn't know the answer. That's when the IP lawyer, brought in by one of the more cautious funds, politely raised her hand. She had a thick folder, unlabeled, and the kind of voice that didn't ask questions so much as expose gaps. Marcus, she said, just for documentation purposes, could you clarify the origin of the patent associated with the core architecture? He froze for a beat, then nodded. Of course. The system was developed in-house, under my guidance. She didn't smile. Right. The reason I ask, according to the U.S. Patent Office, the named inventor is a... She flipped a page. Lauren May Sullivan. That's not you, correct? The room went still. He tried to recover. Said something about early-stage collaboration. Said my name like it was a technicality. But no one was buying it now. Not after the fumbles. Not after the vague answers and buzzword salads. One investor, a woman from a New York fund who hadn't said a word until then, quietly closed her laptop. Didn't speak. Didn't glare. Just folded her hands and looked at Marcus like he was a product that had just failed quality control. He kept talking, but the words didn't land anymore. He could have quoted scripture, and no one would have cared. The illusion was broken. The man who'd fired me to clean up his narrative was now drowning in the blank space between his lies. It was subtle, how the power shifted. No yelling. No accusations. Just the slow, public realization that the man at the front of the room didn't know the thing he claimed to build. And somewhere behind all those polished smiles, someone was already drafting a different offer. One that didn't include Marcus at all. The first call came in less than an hour after the meeting ended. Marcus's name lit up on my phone like a beacon of desperation. 3 missed calls, followed by a string of texts that ranged from faux casual to full-on pleading. Hey, wanted to clear the air. Think there's been some confusion. Can we talk? Lauren. Seriously. You know how this works. We're stronger together. Investors just need some alignment. Call me. Then came the LinkedIn request. Marcus has endorsed you for product architecture, AI systems, intellectual property strategy. I almost laughed. He was trying to endorse the same skills he once said made me too academic for a founder-facing role. Bold move. I didn't answer. Not once. Not because I wanted to be cold, but because I finally understood the leverage silence gave me. Every second I didn't respond, his world tilted a little more off-center. Every unanswered ping confirmed what everyone in that boardroom had already started to suspect. I wasn't gone. I was simply out of reach. And that made me valuable. By the next day, the shift was official. The first email came from an investor associate with a politely urgent subject line. Following up post-session, potential engagement. She was careful with her language, but the meaning was clear. They were re-evaluating the leadership structure. They'd heard my name in the room. Would I be open to a conversation? Then another message. This time from one of the founding partners. No euphemisms. Just, we backed the tech. Not the pitch. If you're interested, we'd like to explore a direct agreement. I stared at that line for a long time. A direct agreement. No Marcus. No Midlemen. Just me and the people who held the capital, the influence, the opportunity to build something on my terms. That's when I typed the only message I'd send back all week. Not to Marcus. He could spiral in his voicemail abyss for eternity, but to the partner who'd made the offer with the bluntest honesty. I wrote, "Let's talk," but not with him in the room. Then I hit send. No exclamation points. No emojis. No caveats. Just leverage. Pure, distilled earned. I shut my laptop after that and made tea. Sat by the window. Let the silence stretch. Somewhere, Marcus was probably refreshing his inbox, wondering how quickly a crown can turn to a collar when the kingdom no longer believes in your bloodline. And me? I was already sketching a new org chart. One without liars. The boardroom was the same kind of polished, sterile cathedral Marcus used to thrive in. Chrome fixtures, overpriced bottled water. Chairs that tried too hard to say modern luxury. But this time, there was no slide deck waiting, no blaring intro music, no host beaming with startup bravado. Just a table, a whiteboard, and 6 people who looked up when I entered. Not with curiosity, not with skepticism, but with quiet, intentional respect. One of them stood up to greet me. Not out of politeness. Out of recognition. They knew whose name was on the record now. And more importantly, they knew whose fingerprints were all over the machine that had brought them to this table in the first place. I didn't waste time. I didn't thank them for the opportunity or apologize for the mess Marcus had made. I opened my laptop, brought up the original system schematic, and walked them through it like I was narrating a memory. 5 minutes. No filler. Just architecture, logic, data flows, and why it worked. I didn't sell a vision. I explained a reality. I saw the shift happen before they even spoke. You can tell when people stop evaluating and start aligning. One partner leaned forward, elbows on the table. Another took out a pen and scratched out something on his printed agenda. No one glanced at their phones. No one asked about Marcus. When I finished, the room was quiet for a beat. Then the senior partner spoke, voice calm and final. "We'd like to proceed. With you." No theatrics. No formality. Just a restructuring, like a correction to a math problem that had always been solved wrong. The papers were already being drafted. Marcus was to be removed from all licensing discussions, phased out of the term sheet, and excluded from the newly proposed equity structure. I didn't smile. Not then. This wasn't the time for grins or revenge speeches. This was the moment I'd spent years earning. In silence, in late-night code reviews, in undocumented problem-solving that only a handful of people ever noticed. The man who'd erased me from his version of history was now officially, irrevocably erased from its future. One of the analysts slid a draft agreement across the table. I scanned it. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was clean. Honest. My name was in the right places this time. They asked if I had any questions. I just said, "Only one. What's the timeline?" "Immediate," the partner replied. "We'll handle the transition." I nodded, gathered my things, walked out the same way I'd left Marcus's office weeks ago. Only this time, I wasn't the one being dismissed. Outside, I paused at the elevator, took one long breath, and finally, allowed myself a smile. Not gloating, not bitter, just free. The press release hit the wires at 9:42 a.m., time-stamped, syndicated, and silently devastating. No photo, no quotes from Marcus, just a clean headline in bold. Lauren May Sullivan to lead independent tech division following ownership clarification. That last part, ownership clarification, wasn't just legalese. It was the corporate equivalent of a throat clearing before a public execution. Subtle, bloodless, final. Within hours, the article had made the rounds. Tech blogs picked it up first, followed by 2 venture news outlets and a podcast that ran a quick segment titled, "When Founders Lie and the Paperwork Proves It." There were no angry Reddit threads, no Twitter storms, just the kind of cold, efficient fallout that only happens when lawyers are involved and reputations are being quietly escorted out the back door. Marcus vanished from the company site overnight. His title scrubbed. His name replaced with Interim Executive Committee. A ghosting wrapped in HR formality. I heard secondhand that he was taking time for family and exploring new ventures. I also heard his lawyer was now fielding breach of contract inquiries related to misrepresentation, false licensing attempts, and IP misuse. He wouldn't go to jail. That's not how this game works. But doors would close. Quietly. Permanently. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. We didn't throw a launch party. No champagne, no LinkedIn essay thanking everyone who believed in me. I wasn't interested in being inspirational. I was interested in building, this time on bedrock. 3 weeks later, I logged into the USPTO portal. File 374X, 9021B. Still active. Still mine. I uploaded the amendment form, checked the box for a signee update, and typed in the name of the new company. My company. No fanfare. Just a few keystrokes. A transfer of power that couldn't be reversed, spun, or stolen. I hit submit. The screen flashed confirmation. Then I sat back, stared at the ceiling, and let myself feel it. Not pride, not even vindication. Just something cleaner. Something earned. Turns out, you can impress investors. Just not with someone else's name on the record.